Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you had a great week and that you were able to practice some analytic web apps in Python. This week, I'm going to show you how to create a layout in your analytic web apps that is responsive on mobile. So if, for example, you have this kind of dash app, right? It's simple, drop down on a graph and another drop down on a bar chart. If you have a user of your app that goes into your app using a mobile device, you want to make sure that the layout is neat and not all jumbled up. So for example, let's inspect a mobile device. You'll see here that if a user is using Pixel 2, it looks horrible, right? There's a bunch of empty space here. This is very small. If they zoom in by mistake, then they have to go from right to left, left to right, and it's just not a very good user experience. It's not very friendly. And you never want so much space here. So I'm going to show you how to use meta tags, one method, and -bootstrap to control the type of layout according to whatever device that they use. A Pixel, an iPhone, whatever device they choose to use, you're going to have complete control over the layout and design of your web app that you created using Dash in Python. Okay, so how do we do this? First of all, a little bit about the data. This is data from Baton Rouge, Louisiana Animal Control and Rescue Center. I really want to promote dogs and cats and adoption of animals, and that's why I try to do some tutorials on this kind of data. And you can see here the drop down talks about different options of different animal conditions and how they vary of where these dogs and cats have been rescued from Baton Rouge. Here is just the animal characteristics and the division or proportion of animal characteristics using this bar chart of all those that were rescued in Louisiana. So this is a simple Dash app. If you want to download it because you do not have your own app, just go here into the GitHub below the video. You will see this link that I share. Download this two files, the mobile app and the mobile app for Bootstrap, and download this assets folder because you're going to need it as well together with the CSS. Make sure that the file structure is like this. You have a main folder, the Dash mobile or whatever you call it, and inside you have assets folder with CSS, and outside of the assets folder, but still inside the main folder, you have these two files. And then just go into the mobile app, this file that you downloaded, and just run it, the script, so you have it up on the screen, whether it's PyCharm or Visual Studio or Spider, just run it, so you have it up and running on the screen like this. I'm going to refresh. Again, you can follow along with this, but if you have your own app, feel free to upload your own app and see how we can control the layout of a mobile device. Okay, so there are two methods that we are going to use to control the layout of a mobile device and make it responsive. The first method is meta tags that you're going to see right here. We're going to touch upon these meta tags. And the second method is using Bootstrap, column and rows and columns, and then the size of each device. So first we're going to go over the meta tags method, and then we're going to go over the Bootstrap. If you are not sure what these mean, the class name row, class name columns, this is all tied to the assets, to the CSS file that's inside the assets folder. And I'm going to explain this at the very end. So if you want to stick to the very end and know more about this initial layout, I'll explain at the very end. So feel free to join me. First, we're going to go over the meta tags. Okay. So you have your app running, everything is set up. The first thing you want to do is to know how to enter the developer tools of Google Chrome. So I'm using Google Chrome, right? So to use Google Chrome, click on anywhere on the screen outside of the graph, right click, and then go into inspect. Another way to enter this screen is right here. Go into, if you're using a Mac, Command Option C, or Windows, Control Shift C, and this will allow you to open up the developer tools right here. Okay, so you're inside developer tools. There's a bunch of HTML and CSS code. You don't need this. All you need is this button right here. Toggle devices. This is a regular screen, your computer device, and this is a mobile device. Screen device, mobile device. So we're going to go into the mobile device. And as you can see, there are few default mobile devices that appear on the screen. Maybe if you have a different Chrome version, you'll have different devices here, but these are the devices that I have on mine. If you change it, you will see how the app changes according to the mobile device. So this is a Pixel 2. Let's go into iPhone 10. Looks like this. It's a bit smaller. Look at all this empty space. We do not want that. iPad Pro looks like this. And we'll see one last one, the Nexus. So these are different versions. Let's say you want a cell phone that is not in here. Just go into edit, and then on the right here, you can choose another cell phone. You can choose a BlackBerry Z30, and let's choose Nexus 10. So if you do that, is there a save button? No, you close it. Now you'll see a BlackBerry and a Nexus 10. So this is how your app will look on a BlackBerry, and this is how your app will look on Nexus 10. Let's say you have a phone that's not on this list. I actually have a phone, it's a Pixel 3a, that doesn't exist on this list. So what you need to do is add it. Go into edit. I'm going to take the BlackBerry and the Nexus out, and I'm going to add this device, add custom device. We'll call it Pixel 3a, and then you have to add the viewport. Every device has a viewport pixels, so you have to find out what is the viewport of your device. To do that, just type in here Google Pixel 3 viewport size, or Pixel 3 viewport size, and it'll give you this exactly right here. I already Googled it here, so let me open it for you. Here you go. So this is the size. You want to make sure that it actually says viewport size 411 over 846, 411 over 846. So this is what you need to put inside here. 411, this is the viewport size over 846. Just do add, close it, and now I have my new cell phone that well, it's not new, but I have my Pixel 3a, and this is how it looks, my current app on Pixel 3a. So go ahead, pause the video, and add any cell phone that you need to this list if you don't have it. Okay, now let's go to the meta tags and see what the meta tags actually do. So these meta tags are hashtagged out, so we don't these are not changing anything on the mobile device. But if you want your Dash app that starts right here, right with this, to be responsive to a mobile layout, you gotta use the meta tags. So let's cancel these, take out these hashtags, and activate the meta tags. Let's see what happens when we activate the meta tags, and then we'll explain one by one what these are. So now we've refreshed your app, go back to it, refresh your Google Chrome, it's important to refresh. And now I'll toggle back to device, go back to Pixel 3a, and now you see that it's not everything on one row. Now we divide it into two separate rows, or actually like four separate rows. One is this pair of drop down and scatter map box, and this another pair. And this looks a lot better. There's no empty space. Everything it takes up the whole screen. You can zoom in a little bit. You can zoom out. And not only for Pixel 3, this is the same for Pixel 2, and it's the same for all the extra small screen phones, Pixel and the iPhone 6, 7, 8. So this really looks a lot better because now it is mobile responsive. But how did we do it? We did it with the meta tags. Let me explain a little bit about these things and what they mean so you can control and change them as you deem fit. First of all, the meta tags is a combination of, its format is a list, right? You see this list here of, let me make this a little bit bigger, is a list of one dictionary, right? And in this dictionary, you have two keys. You have the name and the content. This key name has the key value viewport. You always want to put it as a viewport for this purpose of this tutorial. And this content key has a string of values, right? And this value has different items. It has a width item, it has initial scale item, it has a maximum scale item, and a minimum scale item. Let's go over one item at a time. This width item equals device width. This means that the browser or the app will automatically recognize the device width whenever your app user goes into your app with a certain mobile device. So it will automatically recognize the width of that mobile device. The other option, you can put a number here. You can say 600 pixels or maybe 400 viewport pixels, whatever you choose. But I would always leave it as device hyphen width, because this is it's best when it automatically recognizes the device width. Then initial scale is the initial zoom of your app on that particular mobile device. Again, this initial scale is the initial zoom when somebody first enters your app or refreshes, the initial zoom of that device. So if it's 1.0, it's going to lead us to this kind of view. All right. If the initial zoom is bigger than that, let's say 1.5, let's change maximum here to 1.9. If the initial zoom is 1.5, it's refreshing. You got to rerun the script, refresh this, always refresh to Google Chrome, and now you'll see that 1.5 is really a lot more zoomed in. Doesn't really look good. You can zoom out, but it really doesn't look good. Obviously, it's all cut off, so you want to bring it back to 1.0, which is a normal, usually the size that you need, because it equals, you'll see the documentation later. If we do, what happens if we do 0.5, you'll see that it becomes very small again, like very much zoomed out, and everything ends up on one row. Let's go refresh, toggle again. You see everything ends up on one row, which gives all this awful space, and everything is like very small, so we don't necessarily want 0.5, especially if somebody zooms in. It really doesn't look good on the phone, so you change it back to 1.0. Okay, the options here are from 0 to 10, so you can do anywhere from 0 to 10 integers right here. This is the initial scale. Once you have the initial scale, you can also set values for maximum scale and a minimum scale. Maximum scale is 1.9 here, which means I can really zoom in. Let's refresh this to 1.9. I can really zoom in a lot, right? This is 1.9 zoom in. But maybe I don't want that because it doesn't look good. So I can just say only allow the user to zoom in to 1.2 or maybe 1.0, whatever you prefer. So now we cannot, now we'll see this, we'll refresh. And this is a 1.0 initial scale. If we zoom in only onto 1.2, I can't zoom in more. This is the maximum I can zoom. So I recommend putting zoom in as 1.0 as well, so because there's no need to zoom in more than that. Minimum scale is how far you can zoom out. 0.5 zoom out doesn't really mean anything here, because the zoom out, the most I can zoom out here is 1.0, because there's no need to zoom out more. You can already see everything, right? The minimum scale zoom out will only work if there's a need to zoom out more. So for example, if, let's say maximum scale, I know is 5, and the initial scale is 2.0, this is very much zoomed in. So then you can use minimum scale and say, let the user minimum scale all the way up to 1. So there's a lot of numbers here, but you can play around with them and try it on your own to figure it out. So if I refresh, now I see that the initial scale, let's go here. Now we see that the initial scale is 2.0. Well, let's make this a little bit smaller. It's 2.0, so it's very much zoomed in. The maximum scale is 5, so I can zoom in even more. And the minimum scale is 1.0, so I can actually zoom out all the way to the initial to what a 1.0 looks like. So I was just trying to say that minimum scale sometimes is minimum scale will allow you to scale out up until the whole app is seen. Okay, let's bring it back to 0.5 just as an example. Bring this back to 1.2 and bring this back to 1.0. Okay, save it, and now if we run our app, we'll see that it's back to initial scale 1.0, maximum 1.2. Oops, this maximum didn't really save. And the minimum scale, you can't really zoom out more because this is the full app. There's no need to zoom out more. Okay, so this was this was all about the meta tags. The only downside of a meta tag, in my opinion, as far as I know, is that you can only control it for the extra small devices. So this is a layout for like a Pixel 2, or which looks good, right? iPhone 10. This looks perfectly good. But if you're tackling bigger devices like a Nexus 7, which is a small screen, look, it looks pretty bad. If you want a user of your app is using an iPad Pro, then again, it goes back to that one row, because with the meta tags, you are only able to change it for the very small screens, which is the great majority of the mobile phones. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. It really hits the great majority of the mobile phones. But if you want more flexibility and control the size of the columns of each mobile device or each device the user is going to be using, then you're going to have to use Bootstrap. So now we're going to learn about how to use Bootstrap to control any type of device. Okay. So just a bit of a break here. If you're liking this video so far, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe below and turn on your notification so you can get a video every week of different ways you can create analytic web apps in Python using Dash. And this is great. I love teaching it. But if you want to also support the effort and the time that it takes for me to build all this, you have a link right above in the video of Patreon, and the link is also below the video. Feel free to go into that link and support me. I would really appreciate it. Okay, so back to our Bootstrap and to show you how to control all these mobile devices. So going to this mobile app, bootstrap.py, if up until now you were using your own app, just make sure to download this from the GitHub and start the script so you have this up and running. So I'm going to close the mobile app script, and I'm going to run the mobile app Bootstrap script. Okay. Great. So we have the Bootstrap that is running. Let me refresh. Oh, before I forget, if you want to learn more about the meta tags, this link is under the video. Make sure to open this link. It has a really nice explanation of all the meta tags and what you can do with them. Okay. All right. So this is now running on the bootstrap.py file. And as you can see, let's refresh. It is scaling appropriately when we use a different mobile device. Okay, so we are going to use this whole app. We're going to use this section of the app. Code line 36 and line 45 is what we're going to use to control the layout of each and every device. I'm not going to go over the Bootstrap and how it's used. You have to download the Bootstrap theme in the external sheets here, and you have to go into, we're using row and columns instead of divs and class names. I don't want to spend too much time on that because I already created a video on that. So if you want to go into that video, it's right here above this video. It's called Introduction to Dash Bootstrap, and it'll talk to you all about how to create these columns and these rows and justify and everything that this means. So my recommendation is watch this, see if this makes sense to you, if this is what you need. If you don't need it, you don't need to watch the introduction video. If you do need it, then go back to the introduction video because it will help explain all the rest of the code. Okay, so what is this? Let me start. The best way to start is to say this. Imagine each device, whether it's medium device, large device, mobile, computer, each device has 12 invisible columns. Imagine that each screen has 12 invisible columns. So what we are doing here, we are telling the Dash app to divide up the components according to 12 invisible columns. The first, let me zoom out here. The first, these are as you can see here, the first row right here has the Baton Rouge animal, the title, and the second DBC component, the Dash Bootstrap component row, the second row has the two pairs, the first dropdown on the graph, and then the second dropdown in the graph. And they're both inside a certain amount of columns, here and here. So the first pair, let's look into the first pair. The first pair of the drop down and the graph, which will be the ones on the color, the scatter map box, and the first drop down, this one right here. This one is going to have 5 different options of width for each device size. It's always the same. It's either extra small device size, small, medium, large, and extra large. I'm using the same exact thing right here, the same parameters for the second set or the second pair of components, the drop down and the graph that is the bar chart. Right? It also have the same parameters with the width size for each one of them. So imagine this. If every screen size has an invisible 12 columns, you got to make sure that whatever components or elements you put into the device adds up to 12. If it doesn't add up to 12, it spills over. So let me explain. This, for example, if I'm going to see something on a large device, right here is large. If the user of my app uses a large device to go into my app, they're going to see the first pair of drop-down and components of drop-down and graph. They're going to see the first pair on 6 columns and the second pair on 6 columns, which means they're all going to line up into one row because we have 12 columns, and 6 plus 6 equals 12. So if I go here and I go into, what was it, a large, 6 and 6, yeah, into a large device, which is the iPad Pro is a large device. You can see the pixels here. You'll see that there's barely any space. It goes, this pair is 6 columns, and this pair right here is also 6 columns, right? Make this a little bit bigger. It's also 6 columns. This is the large. I'm saying here, if it's a medium device, then the first pair is going to be all of this, right? The DBC, the 2 components, is going to be 5 columns width, 5 columns wide, and the second pair is also going to be 5 columns wide. So they're going to be equal, and they're all going to be on the same row because it only adds up to 10 columns. It doesn't surpass 12. So let's see a medium device. A medium device is an iPad. See the pixels here. And this you can see 5 and 5. So down there's a little bit of space. If there's 5 columns here and there's 5 columns here, that means it's 10. So there is 1 column empty space here and 1 column empty space here. But now let's say I'm looking into small devices. So if I'm going to see a small device, it's going to be 8 columns. The first pair is going to be 8 columns, and the second pair is going to be 5 columns. So it's going to be off. The first top component is going to be very big and then very wide, and the second one is going to be narrower. So we're going to go into a small device, which is a Nexus 7. And now you'll see it doesn't really look good, right? This is 8 columns wide and this is 5 columns wide. So this seems like all dense and jumbled up. It really doesn't look good. So you don't really want to do that, but I'm showing you for tutorial purposes what it means when there's 8 columns on top and 5 columns on the bottom. And why is it top and bottom? It's top and bottom because 8 plus 5 equals 13. And 8 plus 5, if 8 plus 5 equals 13, this means that it's more than 12, so it's gonna spill over to the next row. Okay? If there's everything equals 12 or below, then everything is in one row. But if you got more than that, they're going to spill over, and this is going to be on top, and these 2 components are going to be on the bottom. Same thing here. Let's look at the extra small devices. These are like 90% of the mobile devices are extra small. And this is what is controlled by default with the meta tags. If you only use meta tags without Bootstrap, it's referring to always extra small devices. So extra small devices, if it recognizes an extra small device, it's going to be the first pair of components is going to be 10 columns, and the second pair is going to be another 10 columns. So obviously they're going to go into 2 different rows because you cannot have a screen with 20 columns wide. So 10 columns, and then there'll be equal, but there'll be one above the other. So now if I go into an iPhone Pixel 2, you see 10 rows and 10 rows. If I go into an iPhone 6, 7, 8, also 10 rows and 10 rows, or even my own Pixel 3a is also 10 rows and 10 rows. So it looks a lot better when it's 10 rows and 10 rows as opposed to 5 and 5 for the big devices like this, right? Look at all this empty space. So if you want also the big devices to have to look like small devices like this, then just put 5 and 5 in the large devices. Sorry, 10 and 10. You can put 10 here, and you can put 10 here, and they'll just be one on top of the other. So this is the way to do it with Bootstrap. If you want to learn more about how to build your app with the Bootstrap components, just go into the video above that will talk to you about how to create the columns and the rows. It's very simple. It's one video that will teach you all about that. And I also go a little bit into these parameters in the introduction video as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to go under the video and ask me. Let me know what you need, and I'll try to answer to the best of my knowledge. Want to say hi to my Brazilian friends and Chilean and Argentinian friends, Canadians and Germany. Thanks for watching these videos and for supporting me along the way. Okay. For those that want to know a little bit about the CSS and how the first app uses this class name, I'm going to go and explain that right now. Great. So remember that we have an assets folder. Inside we have the CSS file. What we are doing is, this is a pre-built file by Chris from Plotly, so you don't need to touch it or know CSS. All you need to know is how to arrange the layout of your app file. We're using the mobile app.py. Arrange that within the class name. So anytime you put a class name here, it will refer to the CSS file. Well, if you use row and whatever we're using here. So as you can see, we're saying open this HTML div, right, inside your app layout. And inside the div, we're going to have two components. One is going to be another HTML div component, and the other one is going to be a break, so it's going to be some space. And then have all this in one row. So all this is going to exist in one row. Let me actually run the app so you can see it live. There we go. I'll refresh. We're going to see it on a regular screen. Perfect. So everything here, oopsie daisy, you're going to see in one row. The first part right here, you're going to see in the top one row right here, right? And the second part, this div, which encompasses or wraps all the two pairs of components, is going to be in another row. So this refers to another row. Usually you want to define your rows first and then define the columns inside the row. So the second div is a row that encompasses or wraps these two things. This pair of components and this pair of components are wrapped inside this full row. And here I'm saying for the first, here I'm going to create another HTML div, and I'm going to say for the first pair of components, make sure that they are within 6 columns. So the first top one is going to be on the left side, because that's how it is. The top is on the left side, and the bottom pair of drop down and graph is going to be inside this div, and it's going to be another pair of 6 columns. So because 6 and 6 add up to 12, they're all going to be on the same row. And now you have 6 right here, which is half of it, and then 6 right here. The last thing, as you can see, it's on the same row. And the last thing I'm doing, I'm saying divide everything up, offset by 1. So this refers to the full HTML div, the main one that wraps everything. And I'm saying do everything, put everything into 10 columns, but offset by 1, which means that I'm going to have a total of 10 columns from here to here, but 1 space here and 1 space here, because you have 12 invisible columns on a device, and if you have 10 and it's offset by 1, you'll have a space on each side. So this is a cool way and a more professional way of seeing your app if that's what you wish to do. Again, if you want to see more about the callbacks or the how to connect the components to each other, the drop down to the graph, just look into this playlist above that talks about all the different interactive graphs that you can create in Python with Dash. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. I hope you benefit from it. If you did, click the like button, subscribe below, and turn on your notifications so you can see more of these videos and how to create cool analytic web apps with very few lines of code. Join my Patreon community if you wish to support the existence of these tutorials, and good luck. I hope you enjoy. Never give up. Keep practicing, and always help each other out, because we are better together. Thank you very much.